Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Pradhap, an assistant professor of English, St.Joseph College of Arts and Science, Cuddalore. Let me discuss the famous prose, The Art of Fiction, written by Henry James. Henry James, one of the greatest American literary minds, was an innovator of psychological realism. He was an aesthetic in the best sense of the term. He gave much importance to art, and according to him, it was the most interesting thing in the world. He studied painting and law, but turned his attention to fiction. With passionate intensity, he devoted his life to fiction. Many of his critical statements are scattered throughout letters, essays, and reviews, but the essence of his views is found in the art of fiction. His theoretical and practical commentary on fiction has been widely acclaimed. The essay, The Art of Fiction, was written in reply to a lecture by the Victorian novelist and historian Walter Besant. Defining the term fiction, Henry James discusses his own principle and technique of novel. By the end of the Victorian era, the novel had become the predominant literary form, but surprisingly, there is no theoretical attention to this form. Commenting on the English novel, James writes in The Art of Fiction, it had no air of having a theory, a conviction, a consciousness of itself behind it, of being the expression of an artistic faith, the result of choice and comparison. What he means is that there was no novel criticism in English when he started writing novels. Henry James has decided to create from nothing an English tradition in the criticism of the novel. He is very certain that no such criticism exists in English. His basic assumption is that fiction is a serious art form, not a pastime nor a game in which the reader indulges his daydreams. In The Art of Fiction, James points out the attitude of people to novel in those days. Though the old superstition about fiction being wicked died out, the evangelical hostility to novel continued. In spite of the hostile atmosphere, the novel flourished because it attempted to represent life. He equates novels with painting and says that the novelist and the painter may learn from each other. Yet there is a subtle difference between the two. James attacks Anthony Trollope, the English novelist, because Trollope admits that the events he narrates have not really happened and that he can give his narrative any turn the reader may like best. A novel should represent reality. If it doesn't, it will cease to be a novel. According to James, a novel ought to be artistic. During the Victorian period, there were many readers who didn't have any clear idea of art. The expression, the artistic value was foreign to their thinking. To illustrate this point, he cites the views of the Protestant communities. Literature, according to them, should be either instructive or amusing. A good novel, they argue, should promote virtues and the noble qualities of human beings. There are others who define novel in different ways, but all of them ignore the artistic value of work, and they all argue forcefully that the so-called artistic idea would spoil some of their fun. A novel, James declared, is in its broadest definition a personal direct impression of life. It is not clinical or scientific since it depends upon the individual artist's imaginative perception, and it is direct, not mediated through formulae or general ideas about life. The execution of the novel belongs to the author alone. It is what is most personal to him. The advantage, the luxury, as well as the torment and responsibility of the novelist is that there is no limit to his possible experiments, efforts, discoveries, successes. Here he works step by step like the painter. The painter could teach the rudiments of his practice. The creative writer also could do the same. But the literary artist would be obliged to say to his people much more than the painter. It is a question of degree, a matter of delicacy. If there are exact sciences, there are also exact arts, and the grammar of painting is so much more definite than it makes the difference. Here, James' theory of the need for selectivity by the novelist was closely related to his belief that life itself was all inclusion and confusion. Life is a fluid, disorderly, aggregative experience in which relations never stop, and it is the novelist's duty, by discrimination and selection, to create the illusion of wholeness or roundness. A novel is also to be conceived as an organic thing, all one and continuous like any other organism. Here James says that Flaubert's best novels are living things like any other organisms. According to James, Flaubert was the novelist, and Flaubert, especially for novelists like Joseph Conrad and Madox Ford, became a fountainhead. James disliked the vision of the world that he found in Flaubert, Balzac, and Zola. All three saw life as more dreary, more sordid, more mean and limited than James believed the fact to warrant. But whereas Zola conceived himself to be a kind of scientist and Balzac thought of himself as historian, Flaubert had shown himself to be an artist. James believed that he could learn from Flaubert's work the principles of fiction construction. James finally echoes Aristotle's description of tragedy. Fiction is imitation of life or a part of life. It deals with the larger truth of human existence that comprise the pattern behind the facts. The novelist is not a philosopher. The pattern of life emerges in his work because he has succeeded in catching the color of life itself, a color that varies as it is perceived and felt by different artists. James' own tastes and temperament led him to deal largely with the moral and social problems of middle and upper class society, but his theoretical position demands only two questions of fiction: that it be made of experience intensely perceived, either from life or from imagination, and that it be interesting. So far you have been listening the main ideas from The Art of Fiction by Henry James. Thank you for listening. Thank you everyone.